I'm done. I'm all done. All right, with the block stripped down, we could finally get to the task of getting it clean. Now, all the accessories are taken off of it, and you can see that there's a lot of scaling. There's a ton of scaling on the block. And that's very common, especially up here. Even though the thing only has 20-something thousand miles on it, you still get scaling. Layer after layer of iron peeling off, which is kind of why some of the old Volkswagen motors from back in the day, whether that's like a 9A16 valve, which is out of like a Mark II, or even some of the older stuff, is just not worth using anymore. Even ABA blocks, which is like an 8-valve block from like a Golf in the middle 90s, all that stuff is totally clapped out just from rusting out. So to keep it from doing that, Brandon recommended that I get one of these. And it is not a medieval torture device, even though that's exactly what it looks like. It is a mini needle scaler. And it looks like something that I think all of these little tines are gonna come shooting out of there and basically gonna vibrate and pull the, or just basically rip the scale off the block. I don't think we're going to be able to use this on the aluminum head. It's just gonna be too hardcore, so we're gonna have to probably do that the old school way, which is like 75 cans of brake cleaner and maybe like a little brush or something like that. But for the iron block, this should work great. Let's give it a try. Good grief. Every air hose ever. All right, it's not doing anything. Gotta be a trick to it. Obviously I did something wrong. Predictably, obviously I've done something wrong. We're gonna have to take it apart or grab the instructions and see if there's something I'm doing. Little piston here that just beats on all of these little needles. Pretty simple, I guess. In fact, except for the fact that I can't get it to work. I think we got it figured out. I think it just needed a little bit of a bump. What the? Must have sat in port too long. All right, let's try this thing out. This is awesome. This thing is absolutely incredible. Just to think, all these years, I've been using a little wire wheel on a drill when I could have been using this $30 needle scaler. I've done blocks like this so many times and spent so much time. I've almost got this entire side of this block done in 10 minutes. Thanks, Brandon. Hands are no longer numb, and it is a beautiful day. Doesn't even feel like winter. And we've got the motor out in the sunlight so we can get a better look at it. And if you take a look, the surface of the block is actually looking really, really good. So I've got two things that we're gonna put on the block today. First, we've got a rust converter. And what a rust converter does is converts rust. I really have no idea. I don't know what the chemical process is of rust converter. Basically, it's going to make a good base to put the coating on. And we're gonna put on some semi-gloss Pour 15. Now I know a lot of people don't like this, but it's always been great for me in terms of coating blocks. Super durable. It does really well with heat, even though the diesels don't get really super hot. This is really good for high heat instances. It's gonna be too nat, and the rust converter should give us a really nice surface to have a really nice OEM looking block. I think one thing I'm gonna need to do is pull this crankcase cover off, which means the crank gear is gonna come off. I don't know if my impact is enough to get that off. We're gonna find out. You know, we didn't have a good experience with the air impact the other day with Brandon. I'm gonna use the electric impact that I've got and see if that will pull this crank pulley off. All right, obviously the crank is gonna start turning when we do this. We've got to rig up something that's going to be able to hold that with. I don't have any way to hold that crankshaft. All right, this should keep the crank from moving. I'm sure there's a tool for this. Might even be here somewhere, something that Brandon left, but this should work to keep the crank in place, keep them off, keep the pistons off the valves. We are just bending. Oh man. I think this bolt has had enough. At this point, I think what the prudent thing to do is, since I'm moving the crank pulley around, and I do not like that on these diesels. They are so interference. It's ridiculous. You bend valves just by looking at it. So I think what we're gonna do, we gotta do this anyway, because we're gonna have to put ARP head studs on the motor because we're gonna be running more boost, is I'm just gonna pull the cylinder head and just get that out of the equation, and then I don't have to worry about it at all. Boom, we got it. Looks like this. This is what the 12-point head stud tool looks like. These bolts are garbage too, they're stretch. So they reach a certain point and then they stretch a little bit. That's why they have a very particular torque, and then the extra half or quarter turn that you do after that is stretch. So you can't reuse them. Not that we would anyway, because these aren't going to be able to hold hard enough for what we're going to run for boost. You've got to get ready to see the weirdest combustion chamber you've ever seen. Now, diesels are extremely high compression because diesel ignites from pressure. Obviously, there's no spark plug or anything like that. So the only thing that is going to ignite that is the pressure. As the pressure in the combustion chamber increases, gets to a critical temperature, and the diesel ignites. I don't know what the actual PSI is. I can probably look this up and throw in a little text bar right there, but it is crazy, as are the shape of these combustion chambers. Now if you look closely, you can see two things. You can see the injector and you can see the glow plug. So these are direct injection, way before they did it with the gasoline motors. Now we've got this wrench snugged up on the crank, so hopefully it doesn't bend or exert any extra force that we don't need. I don't think we're gonna try the impact again. I think we're gonna give a go with the big breaker arm. Oh, wow, no! I thought I broke the wrench, but I broke this. Let's try it again, same spot, but let's thread the bolt in there all the way. I just know that Brandon is watching this right now, Come on, man. I guess we need a bigger wrench or a better impact. Normally I would put the wrench on the crank output side of the motor, you know, where you can put a bigger bolt. You've got the ears on the edge of the block, and you put a bigger wrench on it. But I didn't have a flywheel with this motor. I don't have crank bolts, and I was just trying to get ahead of the game, and now I've paid the price. So can't do anything else today. So I've decided to go ahead and paint the block anyway. Most of that stuff is under a timing cover. It's not a big deal. It doesn't really need to be coated. We're gonna coat everything that we can see. I've kind of got a little bit of a time crunch. It doesn't really feel like it. And I don't want this to seem like overhauling or something, but we need to keep pushing forward, and every day is a day wasted in terms of getting the project done, getting the project worked on. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna rust treat the whole block, and we're gonna put the Pour 15 on it and get it all dialed in so that we can take a look and do some other things when Brandon gets here tomorrow. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn this and we're gonna flip it this way so we can get at the spots that I missed, and then when we paint it, we don't get any drips. Oh my God! Fuck. Come on. So I guess it's safe to say that nobody drained the oil out of this thing when they pulled it out of the junkyard 20 years ago. Oh, fuck me. All right, with that absolute shit show cleaned up, we can finally start treating the block with the rust converter. Now, I usually use a little brush for stuff like this. You want to use a shitty brush because it's going to be toast. It's going to be useless after you use it. So just get a big pack of these crappy brushes and you can start dabbing it on. So this stuff goes on really thin, so it's not a big deal if you kind of get it in a thread or anything like that, but the Pour 15, the coating that we're going to use goes on really thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap out all these holes, and I'm going to get a bolt and I'm going to thread it in just to keep this stuff out of any of the threads, because we don't know which ones we're going to have to use to make motor mounts. So a lot of these taps are not used in the application that this car came from, which is a Golf. So we're gonna have to probably use these to make motor mounts to get them into the Isuzu. All right, we've got all holes tapped, cleaned, bolted. It's time to start throwing some coating on there. I did the absolute best I could to get things really clean without going overboard. Here's the result. So you may be thinking to yourself, man, that guy really overdid that. No way it's that epic. All he did is clean the block. Set up all this stuff, put some lights on the thing. But you know what? This is the kind of stuff that feels good. It's good for morale. I don't want it to feel like something that's going to a car show. I want it to feel like an everyday truck that you don't feel bad using. And I think that's exactly what we've done here with how clean things are. It's the right look for this truck. On that note, guys, we will see you next week. Please like, please subscribe, share the channel. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. We'll see you next week.